I don't care what broke us up. We know that we weren't good together.
For more than a decade, people thought they understood the tale of Christine Brown, the third wife in Kody Brown's polygamous marriage, the one who smiled constantly through the tension, who prepared the meals, nurtured the kids, and maintained the peace. But behind the smiling face was a woman cracking under the pressure. And the true reason Christine left wasn't simply about love or jealousy, or even favoritism on the part of Kody. It was one about identity, about a woman who finally understood she had lost herself inside someone else's nightmare. To know how Christine came to her breaking point, we must start from the start. When Christine originally joined the Brown family, she was not another wife. She was the glue. She came from a polygamous home, she strongly believed in the doctrine, and she was happy to live the lifestyle she'd been instructed was holy and just. She thought of herself as a peacemaker, a person who could even out personalities, mediate disputes, and bring warmth to what might otherwise be a highly complex family situation. But even in those first few years, there were fissures. Christine has confessed in interviews that she was extremely insecure, that she frequently felt like the least loved, the least chosen. While Mary and Kody shared the past, and Janelle contributed the functional partnership, Christine contributed the emotion, the spirit, the laughter. But she also bore the responsibility of being the one who kept it all together. And in plural marriage, that's a burden no one can bear for long. In the early years of the family's notoriety, Christine attempted to tell herself that love was equal, that Kody gave his time, his heart, and his attention equally. But we all witnessed it. The occasions when Christine's face fell, the silent tears behind the doors, the small looks at the other wives when one was favored more than the others by Kody. And then there was the addition of Robyn to the family. Everything changed then. Christine was the first to acknowledge it. She did not cope well with Robyn's arrival. But blame her? She'd invested 16 years in building a family, giving up time, space, and even affection for the greater good. And all at once, Kody was smiling like she hadn't in years. What we didn't see, what the cameras couldn't fully capture, was how far Christine's sense of self fell apart during that period. According to those close to her, Christine attempted to come to terms with Robyn's arrival. She wanted to think that it was part of their spiritual journey. But day after day, Kody's silence became more deafening. He quit coming to dinner. He canceled appointments. He hung out at Robyn's place all the time, saying it was for the younger kids or for family balance. Christine's kids picked up on it. They began to ask, "Mom, why doesn't Dad come over anymore?" And that question hurt more than anything Kody ever uttered. There's one thing Christine shared in private that definitely says it all. It was while filming season 16, when she was preparing for a family dinner. She had spent all day, her famous enchiladas, homemade bread, the whole 9 yards. She wanted the family together, even if things were uncomfortable. But when Kody failed to appear, something within her changed. She understood she was no longer a wife. She was a plan B, a name on a list that had ceased to account for her. That dinner served as a metaphor for all the things Christine had done. Giving, waiting, hoping, and then faking it was enough. Yet Christine did not depart immediately. She remained for years, for her children, for her religion, for the promise that someday Kody would see her again. But something else was brewing beneath the surface. Christine was starting to challenge the very foundations of her existence. The rules, the structure, the obedience instilled in her as a child. She read books about self-worth, emotional independence. She started going to therapy. She started writing in a journal again. And gradually, she came to understand something hurtful. She wasn't living for herself at all. She was living for a concept, the concept of being the ideal plural wife. During this period, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, and all that was brittle collapsed. Kody asserted his now famous rules: no visitors, no traveling, no socializing outside his home. But somehow those rules applied to everybody but Robyn. Christine's children were shunned. They missed birthdays, graduations, and family milestones because Kody would not go to their home. And when he finally informed Christine that he would not travel to Isabel's spinal surgery, something within Christine snapped for good. Picture that scenario. Your daughter requires serious surgery. She's terrified, in agony, and all she wants is her father with her. And he responds with no, because it doesn't meet his standards. Christine went on to state later that she was finished pretending after that. She understood that if Kody could leave their daughter in a time of true need, that there was nothing remaining of the union they'd had. She wasn't angry. She was finished. But what no one else knows is that Christine's choice wasn't solely about Kody. It was about what she saw occurring to her children and to herself. They'd been told for years that the family was one, that plural marriage was love multiplied, not divided. But in real life, it was the reverse. The other wives' kids were becoming estranged. The mothers' relationships were strained to the breaking point. And Christine's house, where so much laughter and music had once sounded, now seemed like a silent waiting room for a person who never came. Christine began having lengthy conversations with Janelle in private. The two women had always had a silent understanding, varied personalities, same fight. Janelle was the practical one, the builder, the one who had faith that in time things would level out. But even she began to notice that the balance had been lost a long time ago. Christine and Janelle sat together and dreamed of what life might be like beyond the boundaries of Kody's control. For the first time, Christine found herself asking, "What if I just left?" That question frightened her. To a woman taught that surrendering plural marriage equaled spiritual failure, it was like leaping off a cliff. But she also knew she couldn't remain. She had become a ghost, a woman who smiled at the cameras but wept when the lights were extinguished. And then something occurred that made her choice concrete. During one of their final family meetings, Kody told Christine that he no longer wanted an intimate marriage with her. He said, "We can be friends, but I'm not interested in anything more." He said it coldly, as if cutting off affection was just another household rule. Christine later said that was the moment she felt her soul leave her body. The guy she had constructed her life around, the father of her kids, her religious partner, had just demoted her to roommate status. That evening, Christine packed his belongings. She boxed them and arranged them tidily on the garage floor. When Kody returned to view it, he was enraged, caught off guard, bewildered, and annoyed that she would assert control over what was happening. But Christine's motivation wasn't revenge. It was about taking back her power. In post-split interviews, Christine has explained that she didn't leave because she fell out of love with Kody. She left because she fell in love with herself more. She came to understand that she had spent 26 years giving up her joy in order to be in a relationship that only felt good if she vanished within it. She came to understand that her children deserved a mother who was whole, not one that was always broken in silence. And that's where the tale gets richer and more intricate. A lot of Christine's fans believe she left in a spontaneous, emotional, perhaps even hurried manner. But those around her tell us she planned it for months. In secret, with precision. She started organizing her life in Utah. She sold her house in Flagstaff. She researched neighborhoods, schools, and began envisioning somewhere she could breathe. She desired a life in which she need not seek permission to be happy. Behind the scenes, TLC were in a panic. They had spent years documenting the concept of this perfect plural family, and one of the pillars was leaving them now. But Christine no longer cared about appearances. She had had enough of living someone else's story. The evening before she broke the news to Kody, Christine had apparently sat with her youngest daughter, Truly. She told her softly that they would be moving, not due to anger, but because sometimes people grow apart in different ways. Truly did not cry. She simply nodded and inquired if they would still see her dad. Christine replied that they would, but deep down, she was aware that it could never go back to the way it was. When the next morning came, Christine spoke the truth out loud. "I'm leaving." 3 words that ended a marriage, a belief system, and an entire way of life. She packed her last boxes, took one final walk through the house she had built, and drove away. No tears, no dramatic scene, just a woman reclaiming herself. That was the day Christine Brown ceased being the third wife and became Christine again. But little did everybody know at that moment was that Christine's exit would cause a ripple effect across the whole Brown family. Her exit unveiled all that had been concealed: the money, the favoritism, the unfulfilled promises, and the emotional abandonment that had been simmering for years. And what ensued wasn't merely a breakup. It was an unraveling of beliefs, loyalty, and the notion that polygamy could ever possibly work when love was predicated. In the next part of this story, we'll go beyond the headlines and the reality TV drama. We'll uncover the conversations that happened off camera, the secret deals, and the emotional confrontations that made Christine's choice inevitable. Because the truth is, Christine didn't just leave Kody. She left a system built on control, silence, and sacrifice. And the real story of her freedom is just beginning. As Christine loaded the last box and left Flagstaff, she believed that the worst was behind her. But she was mistaken. Grieving for the house, the man, and the worldview she'd constructed her life around was only the first step. What would unfold next was much more complex: the dismantling of a family, a faith, and an identity that had been her universe for more than 25 years. Initially, Kody didn't think she was serious. In his mind, Christine leaving was an emotional tantrum, something she'd soon regret. He explained to the cameras that he believed she was bluffing, that she was trying to get attention. But inside, he knew. He had underestimated her commitment, just as he had underestimated her suffering for years. And now there was no turning back. The initial weeks following Christine's leave were silent. The family group chats turned cold. The other wives hardly ever spoke. Even TLC didn't know how to proceed. Christine was no longer there, but her memory filled every space, every conversation. Robin cried nonstop, referring to it as a betrayal. Mary was lost more than ever. And Janelle. Janelle was quiet. Janelle had always been the practical one, rational, solid, not a loose cannon. But she also possessed one of the longest histories with Christine. They'd raised children together, shared kitchens, shared aggravations, shared the work of being good wives. So when Christine split, Janelle didn't perceive it as a rebellion. She viewed it as freedom. In later interviews, Janelle would confess that Christine's bravery changed the way she saw her own life. For years, she had rationalized staying as the responsible thing to do, that she was doing it for the children, for God, for the life they had committed to one another. But when Christine did leave, that illusion began to shatter. She came to understand that staying wasn't strength. It was denial. Back in Flagstaff, Kody's behavior grew erratic. He went from begging Christine to stay to raging about betrayal, to pretending like it didn't matter at all. In one of the most telling moments ever filmed, Kody said, "She's making a mistake. She's throwing away everything we built." But the truth was, what they built had already fallen apart. He just didn't want to admit it. To the outside world, it appeared to be a breakup. But within the family, it was an implosion. The kids were divided, not so much emotionally, but spiritually. They had grown up to understand unity, the eternal unity of their plural family. And now that foundation had been torn asunder. Some of the older children took sides with Christine and some with Kody, but the majority of them just desired peace. Christine, on the other hand, was finding something she hadn't known in years: quiet and silence that wasn't tense. She said those early mornings in Utah were surreal, rising up and knowing she no longer had to wait for someone's okay to begin her day, making breakfast for her daughter and listening to laughter once more. It wasn't Kody's absence that gave her peace. It was the lack of control. For the first time in years, she was making her own choices. She began to reconnect with her family, friends from before, and most of all, with her spirituality. But now on her own terms. She found a church community in Utah that was not bound by the rigid religious structure, but one that reminded her of feeling human again. She discovered that her relationship with God didn't have to filter through Kody, or a belief system, or a man. Nevertheless, the transition wasn't simple. There were times she cried herself to bed, times when truly inquired as to why her dad didn't come by, Times when she ached for the helter-skelter of the large family meals, even though they were tense meals. Freedom, she learned, was accompanied by loneliness, but it was the healing kind of loneliness, not the painful kind. Meanwhile, back in Arizona, relations between Kody and the other wives continued to deteriorate. His resentment of Christine began bleeding over into everything else. He started making tougher rules, emphasizing his head of household authority more than ever before. He craved control of the money, of the property at Coyote Pass, of how the wives spent their time and their money. But rather than unifying the family, his control fragmented them even more. Janelle was the first to resist. When Kody began discussing how he wanted all of the wives to submit to his leadership, Janelle basically said, "That's not the marriage I signed up for." She wasn't being disrespectful, she was telling the truth. And Kody didn't appreciate truth. He perceived it as disobedience, as a personal attack. He started drifting away from Janelle as well, spending more and more time with Robin. Robin, once perceived as the peacekeeper, began to play a very different role. She was Kody's confidant, his protector, and in many senses, his enabler. When Kody raged at Christine or Janelle, Robin nodded and concurred. She assured him that they were being influenced by the world, that they were losing their faith. But the reality was less complicated. They were losing tolerance with Kody's ego. As Kody flailed, the fractures in the family became too deep to dismiss. TLC cameras recorded moments that were cringe-worthy to behold. Tense dinner meals, strained chats, and chilly silences that cut deeper than any fight could. The viewers began to see how this unified family now resembled a cast of strangers who shared the same surname. But off-camera, even more was unfolding. Christine's departure had unleashed financial pandemonium. Shared funds of the family were invested in businesses, accounts, and real estate deals that Kody controlled. When Christine insisted on her portion from the sale of land at Coyote Pass, Kody was incensed. He accused her of taking what isn't hers. Legally, however, Christine had a right to it. She had spent years of money and effort into that dream. That money fight uncovered something uglier. How much of the family's money had secretly flowed into Kody and Robin's household? Paperwork indicated that as the other wives barely got by, Kody and Robin were living large in a home valued at almost $1 million. Christine came to understand that the family fund she'd been hearing about for years was not being equally shared. And once she caught wind of that, she no longer felt bad about leaving. It was around this time that Janelle made a decision that stunned everyone. She sold her own house to invest in construction on Coyote Pass, hoping it would at last unify the family. However, Kody never constructed. The property remained vacant, much like his vows. When Janelle called Kody out for accountability, he sidestepped the issue, accusing her of not being obedient to the family plan. That's when Janelle began to realize precisely what Christine had been attempting to explain to her, that Kody's definition of family wasn't love. It was control. Meanwhile, Christine's new life was in bloom. She began to share glimpses of home in Utah on the web, her kitchen, her garden, her road trips with the kids. There was a spark in her that hadn't been seen in fans for years. She was smiling, laughing, cooking out of joy rather than obligation. And they noticed. Christine was the fan favorite not because she left, but because she illustrated what healing looks like. Her confidence increased. She began working with other reality TV stars, starting business endeavors, and even suggesting that she would get a spin-off of her own. Producers at TLC understood that the fans' allegiance had changed. The narrative was no longer about Kody anymore. It was Christine's transformation. And Kody could not handle it. With Christine's popularity came Kody's anger. He started using interviews to vent, calling her selfish, disloyal, even blaming her for destroying the family for attention. But with each statement, he only appeared more bitter. Fans noticed. They noticed a man who was losing control, not just of his wives, but of the story. In a particularly raw moment, Kody declared, "Christine has betrayed everything we built." But Christine calmly replied, "You can't betray something that doesn't exist anymore." That line became legendary, a moment of brutal candor that spoke to millions of women who had lingered in one-sided relationships long past their expiration dates. By this time, Janelle was at her breaking point too. Seeing the way Kody treated Christine transformed her. She understood that respectlessness can never be loyalty, and she wouldn't tolerate it anymore. The two women, once tied to one husband, were now tied to freedom. Christine's life in Utah started to open up in ways she never could have dreamed. She purchased a new house, began traveling, and even started considering dating again. Fans were overjoyed. She wasn't merely surviving anymore, she was thriving. Her laughter, once subdued, was now loud, unapologetic, and unfettered. She started telling herself such things as, "I deserve love. I deserve peace." Simple words, but potent ones for a woman who had spent decades being instructed that joy came only through obedience. And while Christine was rediscovering herself, the rest of the family was falling apart. Kody and Robin isolated themselves, claiming that everyone else had turned against them. Mary, still clinging to hope, stayed, but even she seemed broken, hollow, and tired. The dream of a united plural family had officially died, and everyone knew it. In post-dust interviews, Christine confessed that the hardest thing wasn't leaving Kody. It was seeing how long she had been cheating herself in order to remain. "I thought I was patient," she said, "but I was just vanishing." That's the actual tragedy of her tale. It wasn't a matter of competition or jealousy or even faith. It was the story of a woman who had given everything and received nothing in return, and finally concluded that wasn't enough anymore. And yet the tale doesn't end there, for Christine's exit didn't just free her. It triggered a chain reaction that would rock the Brown family to its foundations. Kody's empire, established on the facade of tranquility, began to crumble. The wives who remained began to ask questions. The children started speaking up. Years of secrets were going to be uncovered, and Kody's control, the most important thing to him, was slipping away. Christine's journey had not only turned into a breakup, it had turned into a revolution, one woman's small act of bravery that motivated others to finally realize the truth. But as the dust cleared in Flagstaff, there was another storm on the horizon. A storm that would test loyalty against love, faith against freedom, and truth against image. Because Christine's decision to walk away wasn't just about her. It put the system on trial for what it truly was. When Christine departed, the cracks in the family turned into canyons. For years, Kody had dictated the narrative, on television, in confessionals, and behind the walls of each wife's house. He was the one dictating the mood, determining what was revealed and what remained concealed. But now, for the first time, his account of events was being challenged. And that was something that Kody Brown had never felt before. At first, he tried to act like he didn't care. On camera, he said things like, "Christine can do what she wants. I'm done chasing people who don't want to be part of this family." But his eyes said otherwise. Bitterness, confusion, a hurt pride he couldn't hide. Because at the bottom of it all, Kody wasn't upset that Christine left. He was upset that she left ahead of him, that she made the choice without so much as asking his leave, his permission, his say-so. Brown's household had been founded upon a pecking order, one that Kody had labored to create over decades. He was the spiritual head, the leader, the protector. But Christine had shown him that even the king could be overthrown. And that revelation shattered him. As weeks became months, Kody started to lash out. At Christine, but also at everyone else. He accused Janelle of being disloyal. He complained to Mary that she wasn't working hard enough. He even began blaming his own kids, saying they were being influenced by the negative attitudes of their mothers. It was no longer a family. It was war. And while Christine's life in Utah was coming alive, she finally felt settled. Her house was pulsing with warmth and color again. She was reacquainting with her older children, having family dinners, hiking, cooking with pleasure rather than stress. Christine was living for the first time in years. And yet in Flagstaff, Kody was falling apart on television. TLC cameras continued to roll, but even the editors were unable to conceal what was going on any longer. The charming, smiling husband of the first seasons was gone. the one who spoke about love and harmony. What viewers were left to see now was a man driven by control, resentment, and ego. One of the most revealing scenes broadcasted halfway through the following season. Kody sat in Robin's living room, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He ranted about how he was betrayed by everyone, how Christine had poisoned the family, how Janelle wasn't loyal enough, and how Mary was half in, half out. As Robin nodded beside him, her eyes welled up with tears. She whispered, "You've lost them, Kody." And for an instant, only an instant, his expression altered. The rage dissolved, and all that remained was something else. Fear. Fear of solitude, fear of being mundane, fear of no longer being the one person at the center of it all. Because that's the reality that Kody never wanted to confront, that without the wives, without the show, without the drama, not much remained of him. Christine, by contrast, was rediscovering herself. Her voice was brighter, her laughter authentic, her personality contagious. She began making videos, posting recipes for cooking, posting photos of her family. Fans showered her with affection. "You look so happy," they said. "We haven't seen you this alive in years." Christine smiled and said, "Because I'm finally living my own life." That dichotomy, Christine radiating in Utah while Kody struggled in Flagstaff, was not possible to deny. And the media took notice. Headlines began popping up. Christine Brown's new life without Kody. Kody Brown loses control of his family. The Brown empire coming apart. The producers of TLC had an issue. The show was premised on the facade of a working plural family. But now that illusion had been broken. Ratings declined, and the audience turned against Kody and Robin. Each episode was weighted, darker, and uncomfortable. The magic was lost. In its place was the painful truth. A man witnessing his world fall apart and blaming everyone else for it. Behind closed doors, Kody's anger turned to obsession. He began demanding that the wives treat him with respect and loyalty. He refused to go see some of the children who didn't obey his rules. He even attempted to coerce Janelle into shutting off communication with Christine, telling her she was choosing sides. But Janelle didn't budge. In her own quiet, unflappable manner, she said to him, "Christine is my friend. You can't take that away." Those words infuriated Kody, not for their rebelliousness, but for their accuracy. Janelle was also drifting away. She hadn't yet packed her bags, but she was already gone emotionally. The tension reached its peak during a family meeting that has since become one of the most talked about moments in the show's history. Kody called everyone together, the wives, the older children, even Robin's kids, claiming they needed to rebuild trust. But it wasn't a conversation. It was a monologue. He sat there pacing, his voice rising with every sentence. "I've given everything for this family," he shouted. "I've given, I've loved, I've led. And this is how you return me?" The room was stilled. No one looked him in the eye. Until Janelle answered softly, "You didn't lead us, Kody. You dominated us." It was the kind of truth that falls like a hammer, soft but irrevocable. For an instant, Kody didn't stir. His gaze darted to Robin, seeking encouragement. She grasped for his hand, but even her tears were powerless this time. The family no longer believed him. And when belief is lost, control takes its place. Following that session, the family was broken into two pieces. Mary pulled further into solitude. Robin held on even tighter to Kody, referring to herself as his sole true wife. And Janelle spent more and more time with Christine, going up to Utah frequently with her children, assisting her in establishing her new life. It wasn't defiance. It was survival. While the story of Kody turned darker, Christine's was turning brighter. She was creating new traditions, Sunday meals, game nights, last-minute road trips. Her home was full once more, but this time it was full of smiles, not anger. Her children picked up on it too. "Mom, you're different," one told her. "You smile more now." Christine smiled in response and told her, "Because I finally feel like me again." But as Christine's light intensified, Kody's shadow intensified. He couldn't bear to see her happy. In his interviews, he labeled her selfish, manipulative, even two-faced. He accused her of alienating the kids, of using the media to ruin his reputation. But each word made him appear smaller, angrier, more desperate. Fans turned on him entirely. The same public that had found him charming now regarded him as toxic, a man suffocating in his own ego. The emotional breakdown soon became a financial one. Behind closed doors, Kody had been dividing the family's funds between various accounts and LLCs. Christine's exit had pushed some of that money into the limelight. Janelle began questioning, too, about what happened to Family Traditions LLC funds and why Robin and Kody appeared to have access to funds that the others didn't. The more questions she asked, the more he became defensive. He claimed that she was disrespecting his leadership, but the reality was he could not explain where the money went. And silence spoke louder than words. TLC producers allegedly started looking into it too, not due to legal issues, but because they wanted some explanations for the plot. The viewers were curious. Was Kody not revealing funds? Was Robin actually innocent? Or had their family business turned into another sign of their downfall? Kody's face was crumbling. Robin's tears weren't softening it anymore. Each new episode showed the same picture, a man attempting to control something already lost. But Christine? She had become a force beyond stopping. She was writing a new cookbook, giving interviews, radiating happiness unrepentantly. When asked if she missed the family, she said, "I miss the idea of what we were supposed to be, not what we became." That line cut fans deep, because it captured everything. Not only her story, but the story of so many individuals who remain in broken systems out of guilt or fear. By then, Christine and Janelle were something else altogether. Sisters, allies, survivors. Their bond wasn't about the shared husband anymore, but about healing together. They laughed, visited, and stood by each other in ways that reminded us all what true connection is. The irony stung. The so-called sister wives were now behaving like sisters only after they had dissolved the marriage. As the new season premiered, TLC embraced the chaos. They knew drama was a winner, and Kody's collapse was TV gold. But they didn't anticipate how the audience would react. Christine wasn't merely a reality TV star anymore. She was an icon. A woman who prioritized herself after decades of being erased. A mother who shattered cycles of abandonment. A voice that echoed beyond the show. But as Christine's tale captivated millions, a new dynamic started to ferment in the background. Kody and Robin were scheming. There were rumors circulating on social media, gossip of a fresh legal maneuver, a possible lawsuit, perhaps even a tell-all of their own. They wanted to take back the story, to portray Christine not as a survivor, but as the villain who ruined the family. And what they did next would surprise everyone, even Christine. Because the battle wasn't finished. Not by a long stretch. Christine's journey to freedom was about to intersect with Kody's reckless bid to regain power. And in that collision, secrets would be revealed, alliances would be broken, and one last truth would alter all the world believed it knew about the Brown family. Because it turns out, the actual reason Christine departed wasn't strictly emotional. It was more profound, more sinister, and much more forceful than anyone could have dreamed. And that revelation, the one buried underneath years of devotion, trust, and terror, was about to emerge. By the time a whole year had gone by since Christine departed, the Brown family wasn't only broken, it was incomprehensible. Kody had transitioned from being a four-husband man to a man grasping on to one relationship, barely keeping it intact. Robin, the former favorite, now labored under the pressure of being the lone remaining wife. And even she was starting to realize what everyone else had known for years. Kody wasn't mad because Christine destroyed the family. He was mad because she laid bare the truth he worked so hard to conceal. Publicly, Kody attempted to keep his regular charm. In interviews, he spoke of moving forward, of focusing on the kids, of rebuilding a smaller, stronger family. Behind closed doors, however, there was no tranquility. The tension with his children, the widening rift between him and Robin, the stress of financial hardship. It was all starting to smother him. And that's when the rumors started. Rumors of secret accounts, gossip about unpaid taxes, references to business transfers which were not logical. Janelle had begun asking questions months ago. Soft, careful questions that unsettled Kody. She wasn't furious, she was matter of fact. She wanted to know where the family money had disappeared to. Why the LLCs were set up with only Kody and Robin's names on the registration. Why the other wives were denoted as members but never signatories. And when the clear answers couldn't be given, the quiet said it all. Christine recognized this pattern. The constant discussion of shared responsibility without shared access. The demand that everyone pay their way while one household profited. It wasn't new. It was the same silent imbalance that had characterized her marriage for years. The only difference now was that she was seeing it from the outside. And what she saw shattered her heart anew, not because she was missing him, but because she saw how deep the control had gone. As word got around, TLC producers started to investigate. They weren't reporters, but they recognized a story when they saw one. Fans were no longer watching for love and devotion. They were watching the downfall of a man who had lost everything. And Kody, sensing the narrative slipping away, decided to act. He began sending messages to Christine. Initial contact was through the kids. Little remarks tossed into phone calls, stilted messages regarding co-parenting. Then a direct message on camera for the show, in which he asserted that he wanted to clear the air. Christine consented, not because she hoped for closure, but because she needed closure. She'd grown weary of dwelling in the shadow of his narrative. When their meeting day arrived, it was videoed. But even without the cameras, everybody knew it would be historical. Christine got into her car in Utah and drove back to Flagstaff, something she did 1,000 times before with enthusiasm, but now with quiet determination. She did not dress up. She did not put on makeup for the cameras. She arrived as herself, steady, calm, at peace. Kody, however, was nervous, pacing, guarding himself even before she got there. As she entered, the atmosphere changed. For the first time in decades, they stood face to face. No kids, no other wives, no excuses. Just the two of them who had once shared a life between them, now seated as strangers across from one another. The conversation started off awkwardly. Kody began with small talk, inquiring about Truly, Utah, her new home. Christine nodded, returning with brief, guarded responses. She knew what was coming, and she wasn't mistaken. It took him a few minutes to drop the act. He leaned forward, his tone cutting. "I just want to know why you had to tear everything down," he said. Christine slowly blinked. "Destroy?" she said. "Kody, I didn't destroy anything. I took something that was already broken out of the way." Those words fell like a rock. Kody laughed harshly. "You abandoned your vows, your faith, me." Christine shook her head. "No, you abandoned me long before I abandoned all of that. I simply gave up acting like it was love." Time stopped. Even the cameras held their breath. For years, Kody had accused the wives of being disloyal, of not respecting his authority. But here, before him, was the truth he couldn't control. A woman who had loved him without condition, and simply wouldn't be made invisible anymore. He shouted again, louder this time. "You made me the villain! You told the kids lies about me." Christine's voice remained gentle. "I didn't have to explain anything, Kody. They lived it. They saw it." And that was when his facade shattered. He flung his hands up in anguish. "You've poisoned everyone against me. Even Janelle's turning her back. You're manipulating them." Christine breathed slowly, her gaze unflinching. "You're still trying to control a story that's over. You can't respin what happened to make you the hero." That moment, that one interaction, was the breaking point. For the first time, Kody understood that Christine wasn't returning. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not at all. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. She didn't require his approval, and nothing frightened him more than a woman he couldn't control. The discussion went on for hours. There were accusations, tears, silence so thick that even the producers cringed. But beneath it all, something else existed. Clarity. Christine wasn't angry. She wasn't out to win. She had already won by walking out. When it was finished, Christine stood up. She thanked him for the better years. She told him that she forgave him for the worse ones. And then she delivered something that no one on set would ever forget. "I hope one day you learn the difference between leading a family and owning one." And she just walked out. No yelling, no crying, no histrionic goodbye. Just the silent strength of a woman who had found her voice again. Kody remained seated, glowering at the vacant chair. He didn't say a word. He didn't budge. For the first time, he seemed diminutive, not physically, but in stature. The burden of all that he had lost appeared to fall upon him simultaneously. That evening, once the cameras had packed up, Christine traveled back to Utah in silence. She pulled into a gas station outside Flagstaff and messaged Janelle. "It's done." Janelle responded with, "Proud of you." Few words, but they were everything. The remainder of the days that followed were pandemonium. Footage of their exchange was leaked online. Social media blew up. Fans dubbed it the end of the Kody era. Some complimented Christine's poise. Others referred to it as heartbreaking. Everybody, however, agreed on one point. It was the most unfiltered moment ever featured on the show. Behind the scenes, the people at TLC realized they had hit gold, but even they could not have imagined what was to follow, because Christine's quiet strength inspired more than sympathy alone. It began a movement. Thousands of women poured into online communities, telling their own tales of leaving behind controlling relationships, of rediscovering themselves. Christine was a symbol now of freedom, of self-worth, of bravery. At the same time, Kody's public face was imploding. The more he spoke, the worse it became. His interviews became defensive, angry, bitter. He accused Christine of breaking the covenant. At first, she ignored them, but then one arrived that stopped her cold. It was a picture, one she hadn't seen in years. It was from a trip to Wyoming, back when all the wives still smiled for the photograph. Kody was in the middle, his arm draped over her shoulders. On the back of the picture, in handwriting that she knew by heart, were 4 words. It was never over. Christine remained seated for a long while, looking at the photo, her heart pounding in her ears. Was it a message from Kody? From Robin? Or someone else altogether? She had no idea. But she did know this one thing. Peace, however hard won, always has a price to pay. And sometimes, the past refuses to stay buried. As the screen went black, the voice of the narrator would break in gently, almost a whisper. She believed leaving was the end of her tale. But certain endings are merely beginnings. And then, one last frame, Christine at her window in the evening, clutching the photograph. The fading golden light behind her, her expression serene, yet her eyes brimming with implicit concern, the echo of a telephone ringing in the distance. And then, fade to black. To be continued.